Mom and Jobless sister sued me after Dad's death, claiming I hid money, faked the will, and want 90% of the company shares. I'm a 32-year-old guy, and honestly, this past week has been one of the hardest of my life. My dad passed away suddenly from a heart attack, and it's been tough trying to get through both his death and the family drama that came along with it. I never imagined I'd be dealing with something like this at my age, but here we are. To give you a bit of background, my parents divorced when I was 15, and let me tell you, it was ugly. My mom ended up cheating on my dad with his best friend, which pretty much tore our family apart. My younger sister, Amy, she's 28 now, decided to side with Mom after the whole thing went down, while I chose to live with Dad. That choice created this rift between Amy and me that we never really fixed. Dad, though, was a pretty successful businessman. He literally built his company from scratch. When I was a kid, he started a small electronics repair shop right in our garage. I'd spend weekends helping him sort out different parts, and he'd teach me about circuits and how things worked. Over the years, that little shop grew into a chain of stores all over the state. It was honestly inspiring to see him work so hard and turn his dream into something real. After the divorce, he buried himself in his work even more, probably as a way to deal with the pain from Mom's cheating. I'd often find him at his desk late at night, like 2 or 3 in the morning, going over spreadsheets or working on new strategies for the business. But no matter how busy he was, he always made time for me. We had breakfast together every morning, and he never missed any of my school stuff. A few years later, Dad remarried this wonderful woman named Susan. She was kind and made him happy, which I was grateful for after everything my mom put him through. Susan never tried to be my mom, but she was always there when I needed someone to talk to. She fully supported Dad in his business and was a real partner in every sense. They did everything together, traveling, working on charity projects, you name it. Seeing Dad genuinely happy again was a relief after everything. Mom, on the other hand, didn't do so great after the divorce. Her relationship with Dad's ex-best friend didn't last, and she's struggled financially ever since. She's always been bitter, constantly claiming Dad cheated her out of what she deserved in the divorce settlement. But as far as I know, it was fair. He even let her keep the house they lived in, though she eventually had to sell it when money got tight. Over the years, Mom's tried a bunch of different jobs but never really stuck with any of them. She's always had this knack for playing the victim, blaming Dad and the divorce for her failures. She worked as a real estate agent for a bit, then at a department store, and even gave a catering business a shot, but it didn't go anywhere. Every time, she'd start out excited, but as soon as things got tough, she'd lose interest. Amy, well, she followed right in her footsteps. Amy's been following in Mom's footsteps for years, struggling to hold down a steady job and relying on Mom for support. She dropped out of college after just a year, saying it wasn't her thing. Since then, she's been bouncing from one retail job to the next, with the occasional bartending gig thrown in, but nothing ever seems to stick. She's always talking about her big plans and dreams, but she never really follows through with anything. Now back to the present. Dad's funeral was yesterday, and honestly, it was pretty heartbreaking. A lot of people from the business community came to pay their respects. The church was packed, which just goes to show how many lives Dad had touched over the years. I saw a lot of familiar faces, people I recognized from company picnics or charity events, all there to say goodbye to a man they clearly respected and admired. I gave the eulogy, sharing some memories about Dad, his kindness, his dedication to his work, and the love he had for his family and the community. I talked about how he'd taught me the importance of working hard, staying honest, and giving back to others. I even mentioned how his business wasn't just a way to make money. For him, it was about providing jobs and supporting the local economy. Getting through that speech without breaking down was tough, but I wanted to honor him properly. To my surprise, Mom and Amy were there too. They hadn't spoken to Dad in years, so seeing them at the back of the church felt a little strange. Part of me was glad they came to pay their respects, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Why show up now after all this time? After the service, as people mingled and offered condolences, I overheard Mom and Amy talking in a quiet corner. They didn't realize I was close enough to hear, but what they were saying made my blood boil. Mom was whispering about how this was their chance to finally get what they deserved. Amy chimed in, suggesting they should try to get at least 80% of Dad's estate. They were talking about contesting the will, claiming Dad wasn't in his right mind when he made it and that Mom should get more for all the years she supported him while he built his business. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Here we were, at Dad's funeral, and they were already plotting to get their hands on his money. Felt like such a betrayal of everything Dad stood for. He always taught me the importance of working for what you want and earning it the right way. Hearing Mom and Amy scheme to take what wasn't rightfully theirs made me feel sick to my stomach. I wanted to confront them right then and there, but I held back. It was Dad's funeral, and the last thing I wanted was to cause a scene. So I decided to bide my time. I needed to be smart about this and gather more information first. I was determined not to let my emotions take over in the coming days as we faced the aftermath of Dad's passing. I kept a close watch on Mom and Amy. They were being unusually nice to Susan, Dad's widow, and I could tell it wasn't their typical behavior. It felt like they were putting on a show, buttering her up, probably hoping she'd be more compliant with their demands if they acted friendly. I also caught them snooping around Dad's home office when they thought no one was watching. I saw Amy trying to pry open his filing cabinet, claiming she was just looking for old family photos. It was obvious they were fishing for anything they could use to contest the will. Yesterday, we all gathered for the reading with Dad's lawyer. Susan sat there, still in shock from losing him so suddenly, while Mom and Amy were restless, exchanging knowing glances. I did my best to keep a neutral expression, not wanting to give away that I was onto their plans. I had a feeling Dad left most of his estate to Susan and me, with some smaller gifts to the charities he cared about. He entrusted the business to me, knowing I'd worked alongside him for years and understood the ins and outs. Susan got the house and a good chunk of his savings, while Mom and Amy received just token amounts, $10,000 each. The moment the lawyer finished reading the will, Mom exploded. She started yelling about how unfair it was, insisting she'd supported Dad for years while he built his business and deserved more. She went on about sacrifices she claimed to have made, conveniently ignoring her infidelity that had shattered their marriage. Amy jumped in, arguing it wasn't fair that I got so much when I'd already benefited from living with Dad after the divorce. She accused him of playing favorites and punishing them for siding with Mom during their split. It was clear they had rehearsed this. I couldn't hold back any longer. I called them out, admitting I'd overheard their conversation at the funeral. I confronted them about plotting to contest the will and trying to take advantage of the situation. I told them they should be ashamed for focusing on money when we should be mourning Dad. Mom tried to defend herself, saying I didn't understand how tough things had been for her since the divorce. She talked about struggling to make ends meet, conveniently leaving out how she squandered the divorce settlement. Amy accused me of always taking Dad's side and not caring about them, but I stood firm, reminding them of how they had treated Dad over the years, cutting him out of their lives and rejecting his attempts to reach out. I couldn't believe I had to remind them that Dad wasn't obligated to leave them anything, especially given how estranged they were. The fact that he chose to leave them anything at all spoke volumes about his generosity. The meeting ended with Mom and Amy storming out, fury radiating from them as they threatened to get lawyers involved. Susan sat there, her head down, tears streaming down her face, completely overwhelmed by the chaos unfolding around her. The lawyer reassured us that the will was solid and would be hard to contest, but he warned us. If Mom and Amy decided to pursue legal action, things could get incredibly messy. Since then, my phone hasn't stopped buzzing. Messages from extended family are pouring in, each one more loaded than the last. Some are supportive, insisting that Mom and Amy are just being greedy, that Dad had every right to distribute his estate as he saw fit. Others say I'm being too harsh, that I should try to understand their perspective. A few have even suggested I give Mom and Amy a portion of my inheritance just to keep the peace. But I refuse to back down. Dad worked his entire life for what he had, and he had the right to decide how it should be divided after he was gone. Mom forfeited any claim to his assets the moment she cheated and walked out, and Amy chose to side with Mom during the divorce, barely keeping in touch with Dad over the years. I've spent countless hours poring over Dad's financial records and the history of his business, determined to be ready if Mom and Amy go through with their threats. What I've uncovered makes it clear. Mom's claims about supporting Dad while he built the business are wildly exaggerated. The truth is, the business didn't truly take off until after the divorce when Dad threw himself into his work out of sheer necessity. I've also been talking to longtime employees who have been with the company for years. They've shared stories of Dad's relentless dedication, the late nights and weekends he spent at the office. It's become glaringly obvious that his success was due to his own hard work, not any supposed support from Mom. One employee, Jim, recounted how Dad took a chance on him when no one else would. Jim had a criminal record and was struggling to find work. Dad hired him as a janitor and helped him work his way up to store manager. There are so many stories like this. Dad giving people second chances, standing by his employees during tough times, always prioritizing people over profits. These stories only fuel my determination to protect Dad's legacy. He built this business not just for himself, but for all those who depend on it for their livelihoods. I can't let Mom and Amy's greed jeopardize everything he worked for. Yet, a small part of me wonders if I'm being too rigid. Should I really consider negotiating some sort of compromise to keep the peace in the family? I absolutely don't want to dishonor Dad's memory. I can't bear the thought of going against Dad's memory or his final wishes. But the idea of a prolonged legal battle that could drain the estate and create even more chaos makes my stomach turn. This situation is a nightmare, and I feel completely lost. For now, my focus is on supporting Susan and making sure Dad's business doesn't fall apart. I even took a leave of absence from my job, but honestly, it feels like I'm drowning. Every night, I replay that confrontation with Mom and Amy in my head, my heart racing with anger and guilt. A part of me wonders if I'm just causing more pain so soon after Dad's death. But another part is seething that they would try to take advantage of this tragedy. It feels so wrong. I'm really worried about Susan. She's been so quiet since the will reading, and I can see how the stress is eating away at her. I'm trying to shield her from all the drama, but it's impossible. She loved Dad more than anything, and seeing his memory dragged through the mud by this financial mess is tearing her apart. Then there's the business. Dad was the heart and soul of that company, and his absence is palpable. I'm trying to fill his shoes, but the weight of it all is crushing. The last thing I need is a legal battle pulling my focus away from keeping everything afloat. I've even considered offering Mom and Amy a larger settlement just to make them go away, but that terrifies me. What if that just opens the floodgates for more demands? It feels like I'd be betraying Dad's explicit wishes. Yesterday, I stumbled upon an old photo album in Dad's office, and it hit me like a punch to the gut. There were pictures from our family before the divorce, memories that seem like they belong to another lifetime. One photo, in particular, shattered me. The day Dad opened his first store. Mom was there, glowing with pride as Dad cut the ribbon, and Amy and I were just kids, grinning from ear to ear. What on earth happened to turn us from that joyful family into this heartbreaking mess? So here I am, asking for help. Reddit. Should I confront Mom and Amy about their plan to take most of Dad's estate? Should I stand my ground and defend his wishes, or try to find some sort of compromise? I desperately need an outside perspective on this chaotic situation. Update. It's been about a month since I last posted, and I wish I could say things have improved. The situation with Mom and Amy has spiraled out of control, and I feel like I'm stuck in a twisted soap opera. Except this is my real life, and I can't escape it. Real life doesn't come with dramatic music to warn me when everything's about to spiral out of control. First off, I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to everyone who commented on my original post. Your advice and support have been a lifeline amid this whirlwind. To those who encouraged me to stand my ground, thank you. Your words have helped me stay firm, even as chaos unfolds. And to those who suggested seeking a middle ground, I appreciate your perspective. I really did try, but, well, let's just say that didn't go as planned. So where do I even start? How about with the lawsuit? Yes, you read that right. Mom and Amy have actually hired a lawyer to contest Dad's will. I was served papers about a week after the reading, and it felt like a punch to the gut. Their lawyer is notorious for being ruthless in inheritance disputes, and their claims are outrageous. They say Dad wasn't of sound mind when he made his will, and that Mom manipulated him during their marriage to build the business. They're demanding 80% of the estate, just like I overheard them plotting at the funeral. It's utterly infuriating and, honestly, surreal. The legal fees are already piling up, and I'm drowning under the weight of it all. I've had to hire my own lawyer to fight back. Thankfully, Dad's longtime friend and legal advisor, Tom, has agreed to represent us. He knows our family history and the ins and outs of the business, which is a comfort. But even with his discounted rate, it's still a massive financial burden. Tom is confident that Dad's will is rock solid and that Mom and Amy don't have a leg to stand on. But he warned me that these cases can drag on for months, sometimes even years. Just thinking about this dragging out makes me feel utterly exhausted and anxious. But the lawsuit isn't even the worst part. Mom and Amy have launched a full-blown smear campaign against me and Susan in the community. They're spreading all sorts of vile rumors, claiming that Susan manipulated Dad into changing his will, that I've been embezzling from the company for years, and that we plan to sell the business and fire everyone. It's infuriating and heartbreaking because none of it is true, but that hasn't stopped people from gossiping. I've spent countless hours on the phone, reassuring our employees that their jobs are safe, trying to quell the fears that Mom and Amy are igniting. Some of our longtime customers have even started asking questions, wondering if they should take their business elsewhere. The stress is suffocating, and it's the last thing we need right now. Just last week, I overheard 2 newer employees whispering in the break room, debating whether they should start looking for other jobs. It feels like everything is crumbling around me, and I'm powerless to stop it. I couldn't believe my ears when I overheard some of the newer employees whispering about looking for new jobs, just in case those rumors about mass layoffs were true. It broke my heart that I had to call an impromptu staff meeting to address the gossip. I never thought I'd be in a position where I had to defend myself and Dad's memory to the very people who worked alongside him for years. And the embezzlement rumor? That one really gets under my skin. Dad was always so careful with the company's finances, and he taught me to be the same. The thought that I'd ever steal from the business he built makes me furious. For the past week, I've been buried in years of financial records with our accountant, getting ready to defend myself if that ridiculous accusation makes its way into the lawsuit. Susan is really struggling with all of this. She's not used to such drama and betrayal, and she's even mentioned giving in to Mom and Amy's demands just to make it all stop. I've had to talk her down more than once, reminding her that this is exactly what they want. The other night, I found Susan in Dad's study, sobbing as she clutched one of his old sweaters, the one he wore when he'd work late. She looked up at me, tears in her eyes, and asked, "Is this what he would have wanted?" All this fighting shattered my heart. I've tried reaching out to Mom and Amy directly, hoping to reason with them, but they've completely cut me off. Everything now goes through their lawyer, like they've forgotten we're family. Last week, I ran into Amy at the grocery store. I thought maybe, without Mom around, we could have a rational conversation. But as soon as she saw me, her expression turned icy. She accused me of turning the family against them, of hoarding Dad's money. When I reminded her how she and Mom treated Dad after the divorce, she just scoffed and said, "You always were Daddy's golden boy," before walking away. It felt like I was talking to a stranger, not the sister I once knew. The family is split down the middle. Some aunts and uncles are on my side, disgusted by Mom and Amy's behavior, while others think I'm being too harsh and insist I should just give them more money to keep the peace. My cousin Jack even yelled at me during a family dinner, saying I was tearing the family apart with my stubbornness. I had to leave early to avoid making a scene. That dinner was supposed to be a time to come together and remember Dad, but instead, it turned into a battleground. Aunt Sarah, Mom's sister, kept making snide comments about how some people forget their roots when money comes into play. Uncle Pete, Dad's brother, fired back, reminding everyone of the sacrifices Dad made for the family. The tension was thick in the air, and I felt like I was fighting for everything that mattered. By the time Jack started yelling, the whole dinner had turned into complete chaos. I've been working my tail off to keep the business afloat amid all this turmoil. Dad built this company from the ground up, and there's no way I'm letting it fall apart now. The employees have really rallied around me. Many of them have known me since I was a kid. They've been sharing stories about Dad that really lift my spirits. Jim, the guy I mentioned before, the one Dad gave a second chance, has been especially supportive. Just the other day, he stopped by my office with a stack of old photos from company events. Picnics, Christmas parties, grand openings. In every single one, Dad is right there, sleeves rolled up, working alongside everyone else. "This is who your dad really was," Jim said. "Not what they're saying about him. This is what you're fighting for." Those words meant the world to me, but I can feel the toll it's taking on my well-being. I'm struggling to sleep, constantly worrying about what Mom and Amy might do next. I've dropped weight, and my friends keep telling me I look terrible. I've had to cancel plans and miss out on social events just to deal with this mess. It feels like my entire life is on hold. The other day, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror and barely recognized the person staring back. Dark circles under my eyes, unshaven for days, just a general air of exhaustion. For a moment, I found myself questioning if all of this was even worth it. The worst part is that I keep second-guessing myself. Am I really doing the right thing? Should I just offer them more money to make this go away? But then I remember the look on Dad's face when he told me he was leaving me the business. I can't let him down. I won't do it. I know the road ahead will be tough. The lawyer warned me that the lawsuit could drag on for months, maybe even years. The rumors Mom and Amy are spreading won't just vanish overnight, but I'm prepared for the fight. I've started documenting everything. Every nasty rumor, every missed call, every attempt I've made to reach out. Tom says all this could come in handy if we end up in court. I'm also collecting statements from longtime employees about Dad's work ethic and how the company grew after the divorce. If Mom wants to claim she had a hand in building this business, we'll have plenty of evidence to show otherwise. I've decided to take a more proactive approach in countering their smear campaign. I'm planning a company-wide meeting to address the rumors head-on. I want to be transparent about what's going on and reassure everyone that their jobs are safe. I'm also planning to reach out personally to some of our biggest customers to maintain their trust. Susan and I have been discussing the idea of establishing a scholarship fund in Dad's name to help local kids who want to study business or electronics. We believe it's a powerful way to honor his memory and show the community that we're committed to giving back, just like he always did. Plus, it might help counter the negative press that Mom and Amy are stirring up. We've already started contacting local schools about the scholarship, and the response has been incredible. The principal at my old high school even suggested we present the first scholarship at this year's graduation ceremony. It's a small but bright spot in all this darkness, a reminder of the good Dad brought to so many lives. As for Mom and Amy, I've decided I'm done trying to reason with them. If they want to communicate, it'll have to go through their lawyer. It tears me apart to think about how Dad would feel witnessing his family being torn apart like this. I know this update isn't what many of you were hoping for. I wish I could say that Mom and Amy had come to their senses, that we'd worked things out, and returned to being one big happy family. But that's simply not the reality. It's messy, painful, and deeply frustrating, but I refuse to back down. To those who suggested I try to find a compromise in my original post, I want you to know I genuinely made an effort. I offered to set up trust funds for both Mom and Amy, more than the $10,000 Dad left them, but still less than the outrageous 80% they're demanding. They rejected it outright. It's clear now that they won't be satisfied unless they have total control of the entire estate. Their counteroffer, if you can even call it that, was downright insulting. They said they'd drop the lawsuit if I gave them 70% of the estate and stepped down from the company. When Tom told me this, I nearly laughed out of disbelief. It's so absurd, so disconnected from reality, that I can't help but wonder if they're living in a different world. So here I am, preparing for a long, ugly legal battle with my own mother and sister. This isn't where I thought I'd be a month ago, still reeling from Dad's death. But it's my reality now, and I'm ready to face it head-on. The hardest part of all this is knowing that, win or lose, our family will never be the same. Even if, by some miracle, Mom and Amy dropped the lawsuit tomorrow, too much has been said, too many lines crossed. The trust is shattered, And the love. I'm not even sure it was ever really there, at least not from their side. But I'm not alone in this. Susan has been my rock through all of it. She's hurting too, missing Dad and trying to cope with the overwhelming stress. Together, we'll find a way to honor Dad's legacy, no matter how hard the road ahead may be. Through the turmoil of the lawsuit and the relentless rumors, Susan has been my rock, always reminding me of our purpose when I start to waver. I truly don't know what I would do without her by my side. Then there are Dad's friends, the employees who have become like family, and even some of our loyal customers who have reached out to offer their unwavering support. It might not be the family I was born into, but it feels like a true family nonetheless. Maybe that's what Dad was trying to teach me all along. That family is defined by more than just blood. It's about the people who stand with you, share your values, and help you become the best version of yourself. I'll post another update when there are significant developments. For now, I'm all ears if you have any advice on navigating frivolous lawsuits or countering smear campaigns. And if you've got any good jokes, I could really use a laugh right about now. Thank you once again for all your support. Reddit, it means more than you can express. Here's hoping the next update brings some good news. Update. It's hard to believe it's been almost a year since my last post. And what a year it's been. I've hesitated to write this final update, partly because I've been swamped with everything, but mostly because I wanted to ensure everything was truly settled before sharing it with you all. So much has happened, and I'm still processing it, but I promise to keep you in the loop. So here goes. First off, I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to everyone who has followed this journey from the beginning. Your support and advice have been absolutely invaluable during this ordeal. I've read every single comment, and they've lifted my spirits more than you can imagine. Even the jokes and memes you sent brightened my darkest days. So where do I start? Let's kick things off with the lawsuit. After months of grueling legal battles and mountains of paperwork, we finally had our day in court. It was exhausting, emotionally draining, and a true test of endurance. Mom and Amy's lawyer pulled out every trick in the book, portraying Mom as the long-suffering wife who sacrificed everything to support Dad in the early days of the business, only to be discarded and denied her fair share. The courtroom drama was nothing short of intense. Their lawyer even brought in expert witnesses to argue about the value of a spouse's contribution to a business, trying to make the case that Mom's emotional support was essential to Dad's success. I can't believe they had her recount those long nights spent alone while Dad worked, conveniently glossing over her affair with my dad's best friend. But Tom, our lawyer, was prepared for battle. He presented compelling evidence of Dad's tireless dedication, his countless hours and hard work, along with powerful testimonies from employees who spoke about the company's growth after the divorce. He also had financial records that clearly showed Mom had received a fair settlement back then. One of the most impactful moments in court came when Jim, the employee Dad had given a second chance, took the stand. He spoke with such sincerity about how Dad believed in him when no one else would, and how he watched the business flourish through Dad's relentless determination and grit. By the time he finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom, except for Mom and Amy, who looked like they'd swallowed something bitter. But the most damning evidence came from an unexpected source. Remember how I mentioned Amy snooping around Dad's office after the funeral? Well, she stumbled upon something that spectacularly backfired on them. She discovered an old journal of Dad's from around the time of the divorce. She and Mom thought it would help their case, shedding light on Dad's state of mind. But when Tom got a hold of it during discovery, it painted a completely different picture. The journal detailed Dad's struggles, not just with the divorce, but with keeping the business alive. There were entries filled with anguish about sleepless nights worrying about making payroll, about taking out second mortgages just to keep the company afloat. And there were stark mentions of Mom's affair, her disinterest in the business, and her extravagant spending that piled on even more pressure. When Tom read excerpts from that journal in court, you could have heard a pin drop. I watched Mom's face drain of color. Their own evidence had completely shattered their case. One particular entry hit me hard. Dad wrote about a night when the business was on the brink of collapse. He came home, desperate to discuss finances with Mom, only to find her out with friends, splurging on a new outfit, He described feeling utterly alone, questioning whether he should just give up. But then he wrote about peeking into my room, seeing me asleep, and finding the strength to keep going for my son. I'll build a legacy he can be proud of. Hearing those words in court, feeling Dad's voice echo through time, almost brought me to my knees. It reaffirmed everything I was fighting for. After that, everything moved quickly. The judge ruled in our favor, dismissing their lawsuit and ordering them to pay our legal fees. It was a complete victory, but joy eluded me. All I felt was a profound relief that it was finally over and a deep sadness that it had come to this. But that wasn't the end of it. Remember the smear campaign they had launched? Well, it boomeranged right back on them. Some of the vicious rumors they spread, especially those about embezzlement and plans to sell the company, were deemed defamatory. We didn't just win. We turned their malicious tactics against them, reclaiming our family's honor. The threat of legal action was enough to push them into making public retractions. Watching Mom and Amy publicly admit that they had spread false information was a moment I'll never forget. They looked utterly defeated, completely stripped of the confidence and aggression they once flaunted. A small part of me felt a twinge of sympathy for them, but a much larger part of me was simply furious at the chaos they had inflicted on all of us. The fallout from the case rippled through our family. Many relatives who had been uncertain or even supportive of Mom and Amy's claims turned away from them once the truth emerged. It was heartbreaking to witness the family fracture further, but I knew it was necessary. As for the business, we did take an initial hit from all the negative publicity, but I'm relieved to say things have started to improve. Being transparent about the lawsuit and its outcome actually built trust among our employees and customers. They appreciated our honesty and saw that we were willing to fight to preserve the integrity of the company. We held a company-wide meeting to lay everything out on the table. I was a bundle of nerves, terrified that the employees might have lost faith in us after all the drama. But as I stood there, detailing the situation and our plans for the future, I was met with a wave of support. Their faces reflected a shared resolve, and it filled me with hope. The scholarship fund we set up in Dad's name has been a tremendous success. We've already helped a dozen local kids pursue their dreams of higher education. At the first award ceremony, as I handed out the scholarships, I shared stories about Dad, his steadfast belief in hard work and the importance of giving back to the community. It felt like a beautiful way to honor his legacy, and I could almost feel him smiling down on us. This whole experience has transformed me. I'm more cautious now, painfully aware of how quickly people can turn against you. Yet, I'm also more grateful than ever for the true friends and family who stood by my side through the storm. I found family in Susan, in our loyal employees, and in the friends who supported me through this nightmare. And even in you, Reddit. You who listened to my story and offered your wisdom and encouragement when I needed it most. As for Mom and Amy, I haven't spoken to them since the trial. I know this update is long overdue, and I sincerely appreciate those of you who reached out, eager for news. I hope this provides some closure, not just for me in writing it, but for all of you who have followed this journey with me. Thank you again for your unwavering support throughout this roller coaster of a year. This will be my final update on this situation. It's time to close this chapter for good and turn my focus toward the future.